it is my honour to support the endorsement by Dáil Éireann of the programme for a national government that was negotiated between my party and Fine Gael. It is, as others have said, the product of the amalgamated platforms that each of us put to the people over the last number of weeks and months. We are two distinct parties. Would each have liked to have, I know, an overall majority to implement our full policy platform? But the people determined something else. And I think the people wanted a much more broadly based government than could be constructed by any individual party. And for that reason, our two parties engaged over a relatively short period of time to amalgamate in an agreed basis a strategic programme to address the economic difficulties that this country is in and to lead us on a path of recovery. As I say, there are things in it that are compromised, and you can rightly point those out. But I think what is not compromised is the determination of both parties now to adhere to the wish of the people. Others have said it. 56% of the electorate of Ireland have supported the two parties, the largest and the second largest party in the state now, to form this government. And I honestly believe, from all that I've heard subsequent to the election of this government, that the people of Ireland, even those who didn't support the two parties who make it up, wish this government well, because our national well-being and our future as a nation depend on the success of this government. And I, while respecting the mandate demanded of every individual elected member of this House, and the members opposite have made much of it, and rightly so, and I hope we will have a transformed Dáil where the mandate afforded to every individual member of this House is respected and the time provided for that voice to be heard on both sides of this House. But equally, we therefore have a right to demand that the decision of the electorate by such a clear majority to elect this government should be respected and given fair wind. Not uncritically, but fair wind in the interest of our nation. The opening statement of common purpose, which is actually important, you know, the actual structure of the document in terms of the specific policies, and an inordinate amount of time in the negotiations actually went in to addressing the economic difficulties, and that goes without saying. So maybe in the 4 or 5 days we had, a more comprehensive view would have been taken on the sectoral policies had we had the time. But the bulk of our focus was concentrated on economic recovery, and for very obvious and good reason. And that's why they're the clearest parts of this document. But as I said, we crafted the statement of common purpose because that actually underpins not only the reasoning of the document, but the reasoning behind the two parties coming together. And I want to just quote one sentence of it. And that is, "Our country deserves a fresh start from the failed politics of the years past. It also deserves a new hope that a new government, guided by the needs of the many, rather than the greed of the few, can make a real positive difference in our lives." Now, that is not intended to be a piece of rhetoric. It is actually meant to be an underpinning principle that will guide our decision-making and the policy platforms that we have into the future. I wish we had the flexibility of coming in without the burden of indebtedness that the previous administration has placed upon this nation. I wish we had. But, you know, we have no magic wand to make that indebtedness go away, or to make the awful decisions that have to be made go away. But we will do those with a new sense of urgency and a new sense of fairness that is encapsulated in that sentence. My party contested the general election with three main themes: jobs, reform and fairness. And the programme for government before this House reflects these objectives throughout all of its 64 pages. The prime focus of this government, as I said, is economic recovery, and the prime element of that recovery is jobs, the retention and creation of jobs. That's why our first commitment is to a jobs programme, a jobs budget within 100 days, and we've set out some of the content, much of the content of that programme, but not all. And let me say this to you. If you have ideas for that on that side of the House, submit them. They will certainly not be rejected if we can do it and if they're of merit. And that goes through all policy platforms. The view of this side of the House is that if there are good ideas from any individual member or party in this House, we will welcome them and entertain them as far as practicable. We've argued that without jobs and growth, our economic difficulties cannot be overcome. We are determined as a government to provide the basis for that economic growth and recovery. The reform agenda, the second pillar of my own party's platform, is seldom one which becomes a major election issue. But this election was different. Our political system and our system of public administration was found to be woefully wanting. It's broken and needs to be reconstructed. It is in urgent need of fundamental change and reform, and this government commits itself to the radical overhaul not only of the way we do politics in this country, but the way government works and the way the agents of government in public services and in its agencies work. It will be a huge body of work involving constitutional as well as legislative change, and we will make the start at the top, as the Taoiseach has already said. Among the constitutional changes we will promulgate is the abolition of Seanad Éireann. We've done that careful analysis, not in any knee-jerk way, but because we believe that there is not a compelling case for its retention. And that's the yardstick we must put on everything, every agency of the state. Is there a compelling reason for it to exist? Or can its work be done more effectively or efficiently elsewhere? We've said we will have a referendum to amend the Constitution to reverse the effects of the Abbey Lara judgment. Members who are in the previous Oireachtas know how restricting that was on the work of proper inquiry, which is normal to parliaments. And I, for one, have been arguing for that amendment for some time. And one, even closer to my own agenda, members will know, a referendum to protect the rights of citizens to communicate in confidence with TDs. It was a principle that I was forced to defend personally in the high and supreme courts of this land. And I regret that that principle was breached, and I think it should be restored, so that people who feel that they can identify wrongdoing or malpractice or something that needs investigation should be able to reach out to their elected representative in this House without fear of putting themselves on the hazard. We're promulgating a referendum to allow judges' pay to be reduced, in line with others in this society. So there are no privileges afforded to any class of people that make them unique. We're all citizens in an equal republic. A referendum to ensure that children's rights are strengthened. And I know that some deputies opposite Deputy O'Callaghan worked very hard on that process, and we are determined to bring that work to fruition and present it to the people. A full constitutional convention on a range of other important issues. A range of important legislation. I think it was the Taoiseach who said to continue the work started by the Labour Party the last time we were in government. I was privileged to introduce the Electoral Act on that stage, at that time, to actually have a declaration required of members and office holders, so that we know what influences might be brought to bear on them, to have a limit on election spending, a limit on what could be donated. We must go much further and much clearer in that, and we will continue that work. Restoring freedom of information, protecting whistleblowers, limiting political donations, abolishing corporate donations, regulating lobbyists, establishing a petitions committee, and much, much, much more. All of that will be done, and I just want to make one final mention of the new department that I am privileged to run. It has to be constituted yet, as you've heard, and it will be constituted by law, a new Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. My primary role will be to manage public expenditure and to reform the public service. I want to start that work immediately, and we have started it. Even without the legislative framework, it's understood that that work must be done immediately. And I just want to make one sentence about this, because it's important. It starts from a basis of respect. This government respects public service, and it respects public servants. It starts with the view that the status quo will not do, that we must have change, and we must buy into change at all levels. And it'll be my job not to bully, but to convince that we can provide the best public services in the world if we make the changes, open ourselves to the changes that are required. I have much more to say, but 10 minutes is too short a time to deal with any justice in relation to this matter. But we'll have other times to map out what the new department I have the privilege to be in charge of will do. But I commend the motion to endorse this programme to get on with the work that is set before us by the people.
Thank you, Deputy Howlin.